Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your latest edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, hosted by myself, Craig Gray. It's Sunday the 22nd of January 2023. Rangers have just beaten St Johnstone in the Scottish Cup and we're through to the next round, so it's been a pretty decent weekend, I suppose, if you're a Rangers fan, apart from the performance and actually having to sit through and watch the game. But we'll go through all of it tonight with my guests. First up, Dougie Kinnear. Dougie, how you doing, mate?
I'm great for a Sunday, knowing that you've got to go back to work tomorrow, but other than that, I am very well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, the same, kind of sharing similar feelings to you. And it's like a wee episode of Dr. Seuss here today. We've got Kinnear and Weir. Stewart Weir. Stewart, how you doing, mate?
I didn't expect the sort of rhyming slang there, but anyway, yeah, we're doing well. Yes, like everybody else, Sunday evenings are made for podcasts on watching the NFL playoffs. So you see me glancing to the side here. I've got it up on the 70-inch television through the wall and watching that at the same time. So I'll keep you posted just to prove this is live and exclusive.
Aye, it is
football, Stuart.
Aye,
Real football,
exclusive, guys. No holograms over here at Gersnet. But just before we start, just go through the usual formalities. Of course, this is the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast made for fans by fans, and all content is free. We'd like you to share it, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Tell people that we're here and what we're all about. You can get us over on the website as well with the forum at gersnet.co.uk. And also just a little message from one of our sponsors, Forest Precision Engineering. They're a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for many years. And we're absolutely delighted that they're backing our podcast. You can get them over at forestprecisioneng.com. And you can also visit the new Forest Precision Executive Lounge, which is a stunning new hospitality area within the historic main stand. For more information on how to book this unique and intimate space, you can email the club via hospitality@rangers.co.uk. So after our usual formalities there, we'll get into the action from yesterday. Dougie, I'll start with you. 1-0 win against St Johnstone in the Cup. What was your thoughts in the game?
I think progression was always the most important thing. So delighted to progress, delighted to be in the next round of the Cup. Hopefully it's a trophy that we can go on and win this season, as well as the League Cup. I think that's got to be the priority, is bringing back some kind of silverware this season and regaining something from what's been a fairly dismal campaign so far. But like Hampden, like Rugby Park, I think Michael Beale said himself that 3 games in a row we've had pretty poor surfaces, and I think it's been conducive to the football in all 3 games. So it was difficult for a good quality game of football to break out, and that was the case. It was quite a scrappy game. There wasn't a lot. I was kind of hoping we were going to have some signings over the past 24 hours.
There's people say that Dougie doesn't have a sense of humour. Don't be silly.
We can always hope, sure, maybe tomorrow.
Or the next day.
We're going to actually have to try and analyse the game, which it wasn't a great game, Craig.
No, it was not. And Stuart, I think Michael Beale said it was a cowfield, McDermott Park. And I mean, I think there's enough cowfields in Perth already as it is, isn't there? So
there's quite a few there. Yeah, given one of my friends is quite a big farmer in the area, he could probably tell you exactly the acreage of cowfields in that particular part of the country. But I thought it was interesting, Michael Beale's observation that Rangers had played 3 games in 6 days on cowfields. If you think that Kilmarnock is obviously a synthetic cowfield, that it didn't quite, go into detail in that one. But no, listen, football in January is never going to be pretty or pleasant, simply because of the playing surfaces that are involved, and it's more a case of endurance. And the word that Dougie used earlier there was progression. And I think Rangers have progressed league-wise. And yesterday was about the Scottish Cup and simply getting your name into the draw for the next round. It was not an epic, put it this way. I don't think there's anybody sitting just now with the 2023 highlights DVD, even though there's hardly anything on it just now, thinking to themselves, we might dedicate more than 17 seconds of this game, because once you actually take the goal out of it, there wasn't hellish much to actually observe or talk about. But it was job done, 1-0 victory, and I think most Rangers fans over the years would have known the sort of fear and trepidation ahead of this game, because they've seen their side fail in similar ties. So anything that you can actually say, yeah, it's been a success on the road, you have to take.
No, absolutely. And Dougie, I mean, I know we can maybe sit here and grumble about performances, but it was a big week, this sort of last 6 or 7 days for the club. I think coming into it, you could tell that it was probably going to be the biggest week of the season so far. Certainly since Michael Beale's arrived, and at the end of the day, we've played 3 games and we've gotten 3 wins out of it. I mean, Kilmarnock's always a tricky one. Michael Beale, when he was here before, dropped points there plenty of times. He's got the battle scars from St Johnstone in the Cup a couple of seasons ago, and battle scars from Aberdeen at Hampden in semi-finals as well. So, something to be positive about.
Yeah, it's been a good week for results, not necessarily for performances, but I think the last time Stuart and I were on together, we spoke about it's all about results at this stage. Performances are important. We want to see good football, but when you're trying to close the gap on Celtic and when you're trying to progress in the cup, the most important thing is the win. And whilst we are still winning, we're still very much in the hunt for 2 cup trophies. And I say this fairly bravely: we're still not out of the league. A lot of people look at it and say 9 points is done. We've still got 2 Old Firm games to go. We win both of those, it gets down to 3 points. Anything can happen. So I'm not concerned by the performances. I think we all know the restrictions that Michael Beale's working under just now. He inherited a fairly poor squad. It's an injury-depleted squad. We need reinforcements, and I know we're going to go on and talk about the rumours and the signings that we may or may not see at some point. But I think Michael Beale's doing a brilliant job. I think we're on game 9 now, and he's won 8 and drawn 1 against Celtic in those 9 games. So right now it's just all about getting the wins over the line.
No, definitely. I mean, sure, something that I did want to talk about is the performances in general since Beale's arrived. I mean, we spoke, in the Blue Room when he first came in about wanting to implement a certain style of play. And I think you can see what he is trying to do with the team, but is it maybe just a case of, at the moment, he's not got the players there to do that?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty much a make do and mend exercise just now until he gets some certain players back from injury. And you've got to remind yourself, well, at least I do, that there are some players still there who you've just not seen for a while. You're saying to yourself, it'd be nice if Rangers signed this guy or that guy, and then you actually realise there's somebody who plays in that position already, but you've just not seen them for the last 4 months or 8 months or whatever it might be. But I think, the as Rangers manager, Michael Beale has got his own philosophy on how he wants to play the game. And I think just now he's trying to instill that in the players he has available to him. But it's difficult when, first of all, that some of the players that are there might not be good enough for the system that you want to employ or the manner in which you want to play the game. And secondly, you need to keep these guys sweet up until you get a chance to either move them on or move them out. And I think that part of it is difficult as well. And he's also taken on, if you like, a Rangers side that was struggling under Giovanni van Bronckhorst, especially confidence-wise. And you have to say that Rangers have held themselves together. I wouldn't say they were overly confident in what they've been doing, but you need to say that they must be building some sort of reserves, confidence-wise and in self-belief, because they seem to be still churning out these results. This week's been a big week. The cup tie against Aberdeen was hard going, although I think you actually saw how much of the softening up process Rangers were involved in by what Hearts did to Aberdeen in midweek. The games at Kilmarnock can never be pleasant with the surface that you're forced to play on, which is part plasterboard, Park Axminster carpet, or Park Cowfield, as we've been told. And this week, it's been head down, backside up sort of type thing. Just plough on, get the results in the bag. And, as you've already alluded to, Rangers are in a position where they're in one cup final, they're in the next round of the Scottish Cup, and they're still punching when it comes to the league title race. So all in all, I think Michael Beale has done everything it could be asked of him at this time, whilst not actually having all the cards in the pack to deal from.
No, definitely. One phrase that you use there, Stuart, sort of make do and mend with the players that he's got. And one player, Dougie, that I wanted to speak about a wee bit was obviously the goal scorer, Borna Barisic. The guy gets a lot of stick off the fans.
I hadn't noticed.
He's certainly had his critics, to say the least. But he did sort of plough on yesterday through that field at McDermott Park. And what did you make of his performance overall, Dougie? And also, like, in terms of maybe his future, I know there's been a lot of talk about maybe leaving in the summer and stuff like that, and Yilmaz will be the first choice and whatnot. How do you see that going for him?
I think Borna owed us a game, to be honest. I think when he came back from the World Cup, I think Motherwell was the first game back that he played, and he put in that great cross for Morelos' header, and it was quite easy to see why Michael Beale had brought him straight back in. And afterwards, Michael Beale spoke about the balance of having a left-footed fullback at left back, as opposed to Devine, who was always cutting infield. So after the Motherwell game, he's had a dip. He had the Old Firm game. He wasn't particularly great in the Old Firm game. I'm not the biggest fan of Borna Barisic at times, and I think the cup semi-final against Aberdeen probably symbolised it for me. It was almost like the ball was a hot potato for him at times. Every time he got the ball, he would pass it back, or he would want rid of it straight away. He wasn't driving forward with it. And one of my big criticisms of Borna Barisic is when the going gets tough, he tends to pretend he's got an injury. And he's got a right good record of pulling up in injury time, extra time of games. And the game against Aberdeen was just another one for him, where he pulled up with what appeared to be a hamstring injury, so he could go off the pitch. So I'm in the camp there where Barisic, for me, there's a number of players that I think their time is up. We probably need to refresh the squad, and Barisic is right in that mould for me. But that aside, talking in isolation of the St Johnstone game, he done well. I seen Frankie's giving him the Gersnet man of the match. I'm not sure who got the official man of the match, because I was watching the pub and the sound was down, but there wasn't many contenders for man of the match. Let's be honest, it was no standout performers. But he took his goal well. I actually seen a brilliant stat earlier on. So that was his first goal in 2 years, but it's actually his first ever competitive goal for Rangers. From natural play, not from a set piece, which I think is absolutely crazy. It was a great finish. It was actually a really nice goal, to be honest. One of my surprises was when I got up the road, I flicked open Twitter and I was looking at the reaction from supporters, and I was quite surprised at how bad supporters reacted to the performance of Malik Tillman, for example. And I think the goal's a great example of what you get from Tillman. He can go through the game and not necessarily contribute a lot from a work rate perspective, but at the same time, you're going to need guys in that team that can create something out of nothing. And it was his wee flick through to Sakala that created the space. Sakala done very well. I think the keeper touched the ball onto the post. It was a marginal touch, but I do think he got it. It was one of a number of very good saves from their keeper. I know we kind of joked earlier on around there's not a lot of talking points. The keeper did make a few good saves, but when the ball comes back off the post, it surprised me that Borna hit it first time because he is quite short of confidence. But he's hit it first time, and he's hit it very sweetly, where the keeper's trying to go across the goal, he's got up, he's kind of stumbling across the goal, and he's put it back across the face of goal, where the keeper's basically got no chance. And he looks a bit silly because he's kind of jumped to the side to try and get the ball. It was a lovely finish. And
he got a good view of the goal, didn't he? Because we actually slow it down and look at it. I saw one photograph from the game where the keeper looks as if he's sitting on a very high chair looking at his own goal as the ball flashed past him into the net. It looks as if he's got the best view in the house of the goal that was scored.
It was a great finish, though, Stuart. He's put it right across the face of the goal, into the top corner with pace. And it's the one rare bit of quality in the game. And we need that sometimes. You need something different in these kind of games. You know, when they're playing against a low block, it's a dodgy surface. Sometimes you just need that moment of magic. And despite having my own criticisms of Borna Barisic, he's still a Croatian internationalist. He's still a very good player. And I think that's what you're going to get from our team, is that some players step up at the right time, and that's what Borna did.
Borna Barisic is the latter-day Stuart Monroe, because it seems to be that regardless of his performances, he will never please everyone. Rangers will bring in all sorts to try and replace him over a period of time, and yet he still comes back asking for more and pops up with a goal, which is probably more than Stuart Monroe did. But I think your observations are probably right. I don't think Barisic helps himself. At times I find him looking disinterested, which I think for somebody who's played at the level that he has, and as you point out, a Croatian international, given the kind of all-stars that he plays with in that particular team, you would think that at some point in time he might take himself seriously, where I just think, you know, on occasions he looks disinterested and almost like he's just going through the motions sufficiently enough to be picked the following week. I thought the finish was an absolute belter of a finish, and it's the kind of goal where he will never get enough praise for it, I don't think. On that surface, the ball coming off the post at pace, he doesn't get time to, you know, set himself. He hits it first time and scores an absolutely great goal. And joking aside on the goalkeeper, I mean, he had one worldie from Goldson up in the postage stamp that he managed to claw out. Had that goal gone in or been a goal, I think the general mood might have been slightly happier, that it was a more comfortable victory. That said, I don't think Rangers were terribly stretched in the game. It was, for me, a very poor St Johnstone team who delivered an equally poor performance. Because, you know, I know people will say, well, you could say that about every team. And you probably could, but the old thing about lifting your game when you're playing Rangers just didn't apply to St Johnstone. They looked as if it was a case of why the hell are we playing at 5:30 on a Saturday night? 2, we don't really want to be here because we could be heading for a good night out. And 3, this is a cowfield we're playing on. And you know, I thought they showed up well in touches, but it was the same players who would normally show up well in these kind of games. And all in all, it wasn't a great performance from Rangers, but I cannot say that I was sitting there with heart and mouth as I had done watching them at other times. I don't think there was the same panic level. I thought they were actually in control for huge swathes of the game, and especially through the last 10 or 15 minutes. Whereas, you know, in past showings of late as well, you really have been thinking, will Rangers hold out here, or will they just gift the opposition either a winner or an equaliser?
I mean, nearly did though, Stuart. Sorry, Craig, I was going to say that the issue when it's 1-0 is anything can happen. It can be a mistake, it can be a set piece. And whilst we were largely comfortable at points in the game, when you're getting to 85 minutes, probably about 88 minutes on the clock, St Johnstone did start to go the long ball. They started to create a few chances. And also there was that big one where, I don't know who it was that connected. It was a boy, was it Baird? Bear. He connected with it. It goes past McGregor and Tav has to clear it off the line. I think that's the risk that you've got when it's only 1-0. Yeah. And I think you're absolutely bang on, Stuart, that if one of the other chances goes in, there was other chances of the Goldson header, the Scott Wright shot. I think Morelos had a good chance that he should have been finishing. If one of them goes in, you're feeling a lot more confident and comfortable getting into the last couple of minutes. But as it was, we're sitting. I was in the pub with a couple of pals, and you're sitting watching the game, and you're almost thinking the worst is going to happen. They're going to sneak a goal. It's going to go to extra time, and you're going to have to play another 30 minutes on that Cowfield.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you there. I mean, and just one final point on that. You go back far enough. If you look at the likes of the team that Souness built, his mantra was, if you defend properly and you don't concede a goal, you only need one goal to win a game. Now, that is based on having absolute super confidence. Back then, at that time, when you had Chris Woods playing behind Graham Roberts and Terry Butcher, those days are long gone. But if you have that, or you can instill that level of confidence, rather than thinking, oh, here's the opposition coming, how are we going to defend this? It makes such a difference. Sorry for cutting across you there, Craig. I know you've got another devastating question you want to ask us.
No, I was going to mention the point that you sort of touched on earlier about how sort of poor St Johnstone were. I mean, how big a concern is that for you that this week, obviously, we know it's a tough week and all that, big games, but Aberdeen touched on it earlier. Hearts absolutely pummeled them midweek. We struggled to get over the line against them. You know, Kilmarnock not been great this season, made it difficult against them, and a poor St Johnstone team, but we're struggling to put them away. Is that how big a concern do you think that is that we're not killing these teams off?
The Aberdeen game, I'll take that as an entirely separate entity. It's a cup semi-final, and Aberdeen will fancy their chances, and you know they will lift their game, you know, incrementally, because one, it's Rangers, and two, they've got a chance of losing in a final if they get through it, you know. So that makes it difficult in itself. It wasn't a great surface. I mean, Hampden, that was abysmal. For that to be a national stadium, I mean, I used to play in better pitches up at Lanark Racecourse. Seriously. It was... okay, this is the jeopardy, one of the logic of playing two cup semi-finals in January in Scotland, back to back. I mean, it is utter lunacy, absolute lunacy. And you could easily have got away with, you know, but because of the unique way that Scottish football's funded, you have to play at Hampden to pay off the debts that you've already incurred by previous daft decisions you've made. So it was always going to be difficult. I would never read too much into the Aberdeen performance simply because of the circumstances. Equally, I would never read too much into the circumstances behind the Kilmarnock win, because that pitch is shocking. It's an abomination of what you should be playing football on. The best example I can give of how bad that Kilmarnock surface is was the Hampden pitch on the Sunday was actually better than it. And you saw how bad that was. It was like something that had failed in the rehearsals or failed for the edition of the remake of the Psalm or Passchendaele. But it wasn't a surface that you could play football on. And Kilmarnock, for me, is a surface that you should never be playing football on at any time. And all it, you know, if you speak to enough boxers, a boxer will always tell you one thing: you can only beat who is in front of you. You have to beat them first before you progress in your career or onto your next title fight or whatever it is. And football is the exact same. And this week, whoever's come up against Rangers or stood up against Rangers, Rangers have eventually knocked them over. And that is something you should be content with in terms of the progress that they're making under Michael Beale.
Craig, you asked a question there about Ridvan Yilmaz, for example. Is he the long-term left back? One of the interesting comments that Michael Beale made after the Kilmarnock game is no matter what Bayern Munich done for Malik Tillman's career and his development, nothing would ever prepare him to play on the kind of surface at Rugby Park. And when we're talking about Borna Barisic and giving him credit for the performance he put in up in Perth and the way he's finished the goal. One of the things that I would say is we've probably got a number of players who are in a similar position to Malik Tillman, and Yilmaz is one of them. These are guys that have not really played in these surfaces before. And whilst we all want to have footballers on the pitch, guys that are very good technically, these kind of surfaces sometimes aren't the games to play technical footballers. And I look at someone like Yilmaz and I wonder, the way that he dribbles the ball, for example, how is he going to translate into these kind of games and these kind of surfaces? Is his game going to be transferable to be able to play on those kind of surfaces? And I think there's a lot of talk just now around the goalkeeper situation. Well, we get to see Robbie McCrory before the season's out to see if Robbie McCrory is good enough to be number one. I think it's going to be interesting to see if Yilmaz gets an opportunity to play at some point when he eventually comes back from injury, because we all want to see if he is capable of stepping in for Borna Barisic long term.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I think that's an interesting point you made about the pitch with Yilmaz, and even with Čolak as well. I think Michael Beale touched on that Čolak could have maybe played a part on Wednesday, but he just didn't want to take any risks in the pitch. And we've obviously seen before the likes of Jamie Murphy get injured on that pitch as well. So it's certainly not ideal, but yeah, it's just something that we've unfortunately had to put up with for the last few years. But enough about that game yesterday. We don't really want to talk about it anymore. We're going to move on to Dougie's favourite subject, which is Rangers no signing anybody. We know that deals for Cantwell and Raskin are apparently close, Dougie. What's your overall thoughts on the two players, and who else would you like to see brought in?
I think we desperately need to bring in quality in a number of positions. I think Stuart's made a very good point earlier around, you look at the current squad as it is, or the available players as it is just now, and you see the bench. The bench looked a little bit stronger against St Johnstone because Sands was back on it, Čolak was back on it, which was good. But there's still glaring weaknesses on that bench, and we just need to add quality, because with the 5 sub rule, we are going to be able to maximise the subs, and subs are going to have a big impact. And you look at that bench, and you don't really see a lot of players that can come on and change the game. So it's important we bring in guys that can change the game, as well as guys that can start the pitch. There's a number of positions that we need to strengthen, and there really is. You could go through the 1 to 11 right now. Probably none more so than in goals. There's a big debate about in goals, but we're in January. January transfer window is always a notoriously difficult month to sign players. Nobody wants to sell their best players in January, so you're kind of shopping in this unique window. So we're not going to be able to strengthen in all the positions in January. But I do suspect, and I think Michael Beale said himself, that we're going to have around a 25% turnover of players within the next couple of windows. So I am expecting a fairly big transformation in the squad over the next couple of windows. It's all about who's available right now. And if we talk about Cantwell and then come on to Raskin, Cantwell's a player who is obviously out of contract in the summer. So that's where the opportunity, in fact, both Cantwell and Raskin are out of contract in the summer, and that's where the opportunity to sign these guys comes in. You're able to sign guys that are quality players because they're out of contract and we're allowed to speak to them. And in both situations, the teams will want to cash in and get something in return this window, so they're not losing them entirely for nothing. Both appear to be good players, right? Cantwell's the one that I personally know more of because he played in the English Premiership. He's someone that you obviously get to see live on the telly and on Match of the Day. Cantwell's only 24 years old. I find it laughable when you listen to some supporters and read some supporters saying that he's been off the boil for a year, which means he's automatically not good enough to come to us. The Cantwell that I seen 2 years ago in the English Premiership was being tipped for 40 to 50 million pound moves at one point. So we're talking about a real quality player that's just lost his way. And the comparison I give, for example, is Ryan Kent. I think a few people are forgetting just now that when we signed Ryan Kent, he was on the back of 4 or 5 failed loan spells. And he came up here because Michael Beale knew who he was. He trusted him as a player, and he knew exactly what that style could bring to our team. And that's what I think with Cantwell. And I think what Michael Beale's identifying right now is he's looking at what's missing from my squad. What do I need in my squad? And both Raskin and Cantwell are positions that we need to strengthen. And that was probably my criticism of Gio, is in the summer, it kind of felt to me that he just inherited the summer signings. It was just who we signed, he just took on. And he then put out in the pitch to see who he could kind of form the best team with. It seems under Michael Beale is a wee bit more structured of this is exactly the position I want to strengthen in and the kind of player profile that I'm looking for. So Cantwell is for me an exciting signing. He might be off form, but we've got an opportunity to draw in Partick Thistle in the Cup and the game being scheduled of the weekend of the 11th of February, that in a couple of weeks' time we're playing a championship side. If we do get these guys through the door, that's probably the game to give them a start. And it'll be really interesting to see who we do get in the door. Whereabouts these players play. Cantwell can play in a number of positions as well. So he gives us great flexibility. Nicholas Raskin, we've always spoken about the need for a central midfielder. There's a lot of debate around whether we need a 6, an 8 or a 10. I think Stephen Davis was a huge loss to our team, if I'm honest. I know he was ageing, but Stephen Davis was just a Rolls Royce of a player, somebody who just sits in front of that back four. And if Stuart's got one eye on the NFL, I'd describe him as a quarterback. He just sits there and he pings the balls forward and finds the space. And apparently that's what Nicholas Raskin's good at. He's not someone I've seen a lot of. I have, like every Rangers fan, went and looked at him on YouTube, but we've all been burnt in the past watching guys on YouTube and basing our thoughts off of that. Interestingly, I couldn't remember that he actually played for Standard against us when they came to Ibrox. And I did re-watch that game and he came off the bench, but again, difficult to judge him. So whilst I'm excited about him because on paper he looks like what we need, and likewise with Cantwell, I think these are the kind of guys that you want to see in a Rangers jersey to truly judge them and know whether they're the right fit for us and for Scottish football. But I think on paper, they're both positions that we are looking to strengthen in, and they look like they've got real assets that can make our squad stronger.
Yeah, I mean, sure. One thing that's kind of, I don't know if concerning's the right word, maybe it is, but from what we're kind of hearing through the grapevine, it seems that Cantwell, Raskin, Whittaker at Swansea, it seems that these players are all really, really keen to come to Rangers and they actually want the moves to go ahead. So the issue that I maybe have is when you've got, we know about player power nowadays and all that, when you've got players that want to go to these clubs, why is it taking Rangers, to the 22nd of January and we've still not announced anything? Why is it taking so long? The kind of difficulties of the January transfer window have been, discussed time and again, and Dougie's alluded to the kind of points that most people would make. The other thing is, if you go and buy somebody in January, normally, if you really desperately need them, that usually takes a big wedge of cash. If you remember back when Rangers did actually sign players for cash in January, sometimes the amount of money it took to actually get players to move, at that time, they're not working in that market just now. And I think what you're looking at is, so for instance, take Cantwell. Where is his stock just now? It's lower than it was probably 2 years ago. What are the circumstances behind that? Well, he played in an English Premier League team who were relegated, probably each and every player suffering from shell shock at the batterings that they took over a period of time. You changes in management there. You had new managers coming in, new styles and all the rest of it. Maybe didn't fancy the way he played, maybe thought he was a bit lightweight, maybe we're looking for more of a grafter in the middle of the park. A whole raft of circumstances and scenarios that you could level at just about any player. But sometimes, even though they're going through a bit of a trough, it takes you a bit of time to actually convince them that this is the move you want to make. Equally, the club that they're leaving might not want to release them quite yet, and the player is angling for a move. Now, why would a player angle for a move to Rangers? Because despite everything, and I mean it, despite everything, Rangers are still a brand and still a club that are playing European football
you know, when you're playing in English second tier or even third tier or wherever it might be, those opportunities are not going to come round to you very, very quickly unless your team progresses or your club progresses and you progress with them at the same time. So therefore, it becomes a real selling point if you approach some of these players. But even if you approach the player and the player wants to come, convincing the parent club that now would be a good time to take 2 goldfish in a balloon, when, you know, if you wait till the summer, you're getting nothing out of it. But we've got a wee pot of cash here that you might be able to take. You know, knowing and having covered transfer deals for, you know, umpteen years, I know how fickle it can be. Absolutely how fickle it can be, because you suddenly get somebody saying, "Oh, wait a wee minute, I've heard a whisper that somebody else might be interested in me." Now, and it's again, I go back to say Cantwell's case, or, you know, however it might be. If they suddenly find that they don't need to move 400 miles up the road to Glasgow to progress their career, and maybe just move across the country to, say, Leicester City, who are looking for players, or you know, to Everton, you know, who are desperate for players as well, that would then mean that a player has got something else to think about. So this whole thing about taking it up to great making the signings, this is not the same as signing guys who are contract free in the summer. It's an entirely different subject matter almost. This is about guys who are making a career change halfway through a season. Therefore, it's got to suit them, got to suit the buying club, got to suit the selling club. And it also makes them an open target for other people to come in and just completely gazump Rangers. And I think maybe Rangers are trying to get all the ducks in a row and got all the paperwork done and everything played out, and, you know, I's dotted and T's crossed, just to get these deals over the line, because they know that somewhere along the line somebody else might be looking at them.
Craig, yeah. I think that's the thing, right? We're all eager to get new faces in the door. We can see the squad needs it. I think as supporters we need it as well, because we need that a bit of a lift. Seeing some new faces coming in that you get excited about and you're dying to see play in the flesh. But the reality is it needs to work for all parties, and I think Stuart's absolutely bang on in the Cantwell case that other offers might come in that he's considering, for example, but the financial package is the big significant factor for me. He might be out of contract in the summer, but as Stuart said, Norwich will be looking for a fee right now, and who knows what kind of fee Norwich are looking for. And it comes down to, is it money we have? Because I think the truth is we don't have a lot of money right now to go and splash on new players, and Norwich might have said we want £2.5 million. £2.5 million in January in Cantwell's years, and we look at it and say, do we really want to pay £2.5 million for a player we can get for free in the summer? So whilst as supporters we're all eager for movement to the transfer market and see the new faces in, at the same time I'm not adverse to playing poker and saying, right, okay, we'll sign you in a pre-contract, we'll get you in the summer, and you can come in the summer for free, and then let's see who folds first. Let's see whether Norwich or Standard Liège eventually fold and say, see that £1 million offer that you did offer, we're going to take it now. But on Raskin, I think I seen today on Instagram, he's training with Standard Liège. So whilst there's a lot of noise, particularly coming out of the Belgian media, that the deal's been agreed, I don't think it's as far along as what we hope it is, given that he's actually in Belgium still training.
Yeah, I mean, the Raskin ones, I think, off the top of my head, should be a wee bit more cut and dried than Cantwell, because at the end of the day, we've made the point here. Cantwell, he's 24, he's out of contract in the summer, he's an English player. A couple of years ago he's been touted for a big move, so he will have lots of interest. You know, it's not as if he's been, you know, crucified by injuries or anything like that, although in fairness, if he was, then we would definitely be on it, wouldn't we? But, like, he's a quality player. The Raskin one for me, because I know that he sort of fell out with the hierarchy at Standard Liège, and checking earlier today, he's no played since, I think, November, December time, roughly. So, like, I mean, I know he's trading and stuff like that, but I think that's maybe just to sort of tide him over and stuff like that. So hopefully something can get agreed. I mean, one thing that I was wanting to touch on as well, not just about incomings but outgoings as well. I don't think we're not going to see senior players leaving January. I think Michael Beale's made that pretty clear, unless obviously a monstrous bid comes in. But I think this is maybe my Football Manager head on. I was looking at Raskin and Glenn Kamara, who I think are relatively similar position anyway, and thinking, well, can maybe bring in Raskin in the summer on a free, and then play Kamara for the rest of the season. Hope that his performances go up, and then maybe we can get an extra couple of million quid on top of his value. I mean, who would you say right now in the squad needs to go, basically, needs to get sold if we can get an offer? Because I'm looking at it, I'm thinking Morelos, Barisic, Kamara, they're free, to name a few, in my opinion.
How long do we have, Craig? I think everyone's available for the right price, first and foremost. I think everyone's available, but having said that, it's all about timing. There's some really good chat going on just now in the comment section about rumoured bids coming in for our players. There's been a rumour in the last 24 hours that Rangers have rejected bids for Connor Goldson and Fashion Sakala. And whilst I say every single player is available at the right price, you also need to make sure that you've got replacements lined up that are better and it's the right fit for the team. And the reality is right now on the Goldson and Sakala one just now is Connor Goldson's came in and he's a huge factor why we're not conceding as many goals. And Fashion Sakala is arguably our most creative player right now. He's the one for me that's really shining and taking this opportunity under Michael Beale. So whilst I say everyone's got their asking price, it would take big cash for us to part with those two players. In terms of other players in the squad, I think it's different to say who I would let go versus who I would let go in this month. Because whilst I say the time's up for McGregor, for example, or I don't think McLaughlin is a long-term number one. I'd let potentially the both of them go. I think the chances of us signing a number one goalkeeper in January is slim. Whilst I think the future of Borna Barisic is up, I don't think now's the right time to move him on because Yilmaz should be his successor. So if you're bringing in someone to replace Borna, it's probably somebody that you're expecting to be challenging Yilmaz, and therefore you don't want to do that whilst Yilmaz is out injured halfway through the season. And you can go through the entire squad. Guys like Hillander's time is up at Rangers. He is injury prone, a high earner. He's not contributing enough. A bit like Kamar Roof for me, and it's a shame because both players are excellent footballers. Hillander's out of contract in the summer. Roof has got another 1 year, but nobody's going to take them in January. So whilst we could sit here just now and say there's a lot of players just now that we would want to get rid of, I don't think we want to go through the entire squad and humiliate or devalue some of the players. But it's interesting the ones that you called out because Kamara, for example, if we do finalise Nicholas Raskin, you could argue that there's a number of players that he's going to be competing with. So Davis, what does it mean for long-term future of Stephen Davis? He's obviously injured just now. The likelihood is we'll probably never see Stephen Davis again play for Rangers, which is a very sad ending to an amazing career of a brilliant footballer. I don't know what it means for Glenn Kamara if we do sign Nicholas Raskin, because for me, going back to the point around Michael Beale identifying specific types of player that he wants, I think Nicholas Raskin's more suited to how Michael Beale wants to play than Glenn Kamara. But it all depends on bids because I expected us to sell Kamara in the summer. I really did. And we were actually in for Raskin in the summer, but stand up the edge, we're looking for too much money. We have our values on players, and guys like Kamara are not regulars in the team just now. 12 months ago, his value would have been a lot higher. The reality is right now, his value is probably not as high as what we would want to sell him for. I'd be looking for minimum $6 million for Glenn Kamara, but I don't think we'd get that for him right now. So the timing might not be right to sell Kamara. It all depends on who comes in and who's interested in our players. Cantwell's another one though, because Cantwell can play a number of positions. I think it puts a question mark on the future of Scott Arfield, for example. I don't think Scott Arfield will get a new contract in the summer. If we do, bring in Cantwell. But I also look at the type of player that Cantwell is and look at how many players we've got very similar to Cantwell. Ryan Kent plays on the left. Cantwell can play on the left. Does that mean that Ryan Kent's going to leave in the summer? You've got Yanis Hadji, you've got Tom Lawrence out injured just now and looking to come back. They play a very similar role to Cantwell. What does that mean for their futures? Although Hadji's obviously signed his new contract. The big one for me is Tillman. You know, I spoke earlier on about the criticism that I keep seeing for Tillman, but I'm going to put it out there. Malik Tillman is a fantastic footballer. And we're going to come on and talk about Charlie McCann, for example, who's rumoured to be going to Forest Green Rovers. And whilst it's disappointing to lose guys that have been coming through the B team, Malik Tillman's only a year older than Charlie McCann, and he's an established first team player. Nicholas Raskin is only 21 as well. So for me, I would want to sign Malik Tillman on a permanent contract, but I don't know whether that's going to be possible if we've already got so many guys that play a similar style. So it's an interesting one come this summer. I think right now it's all about bringing in quality. I don't expect a lot of exits in January, other than some young players. There's a lot of players I'd want to get rid of, and the one player that I'd drop in before I finally shut up is Rabbi Matondo. If ever there's a player that just symbolises everything wrong with the Rangers transfer policy, it's Rabbi Matondo. He does not suit Scottish football. He's not good enough. I say that knowing that at some point he's going to come good and it's going to completely bite me in the arse. But Rabbi Matondo for me is a player that we should just be trying to get rid of. But it comes back to the same challenges again. He's rumoured to be on £28,000 a week. We've paid $2 million for him. Who's going to pay that? So it all comes down to interest. Who's going to actually want our players? But there's a lot of players that I think their time's up at Rangers.
I'll make the point in terms of Tillman. Tillman has been in Germany with Bayern Munich. Okay, he's a guy who basically runs around in a Bentley when other guys that you're quoting are in a 1987 Vauxhall Astra with a big exhaust on it that's had 17 different owners. I mean, you are comparing apples and turnips here. I'll be absolutely, there is people will say, well, tell me to shut up first and foremost, but no, you're talking about somebody who Bayern Munich identified as someone who could play for them. If he can't play for them, the next step down from that, you would still take somebody like that rather than somebody who's standing at the bottom level trying to go up the way. And people constantly make that mistake. Oh, he's ex-Arsenal. No, you can go and sign guys that are ex-Arsenal youth players, ex-Old Trafford youth players, ex-Barcelona youth players and all the rest of it. And the reason you're signing them is because they haven't shown they haven't come to fruition in the same way as people expected them to. But that doesn't make them lesser players than the ones that, I'll make a point on Tillman and, on Cantwell or whoever it might be. Rangers fans forget, and they do really forget. If you were naming an all-time Rangers great 11, two of the names, in fact, maybe three of the names that would be in that team, right, might be Haitley, might be Laudrup, and might be Gascoigne. Can anybody actually remember where they guys were career-wise when they actually signed for Rangers? Laudrup was getting shunted from pillar to post. Suddenly played his best football at Rangers. Why? Because he was happy and he was settled. Gascoigne, he didn't even know he'd signed for Rangers. He'd signed for Glasgow when he arrived. That's how mixed up he was. And Haitley just wanted to be playing football again. And you look at the three of them, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm not sure about Cantwell. I'm not saying that Cantwell's going to be in the same category of any of these guys, but sometimes you've got to give yourself a wee bit of history lesson and a wee bit of a wake-up call just to actually realise that there's players that have played for Rangers and played well for Rangers who were going nowhere career-wise at their particular level and turned into absolute diamonds.
Sure, there's a right good balance, isn't there? There's signing guys that are at a top level team who are more than capable of stepping down. Let's be honest, right? Going from Bayern Munich to Rangers is a step down in quality. So there's absolutely players like Tillman who could step down from Bayern Munich, but in the same breath, there's absolutely gems available who could step up. And whilst we're linked with Raskin and Cantwell, we're also linked with Morgan Whittaker, who's at Swansea. Morgan Whittaker's a really interesting one for me because he's been on loan at Plymouth for the first 6 months of the year. He plays as a number 10 in the right-hand side, and he is the top goal scorer of the team sitting top of the league. So whilst we're talking about guys like Tillman, signing them from Bayern Munich, I think there's also a market there to be signing guys. You know, let's be honest, that's the league that we pinched Aribo from, and Aribo came up to be a very good player. There is also some diamonds available, and I think Michael Beale will know that market very well. I think that's where he knows Cantwell from his time in under-23s. I think we've got to trust that Michael Beale will be able to spot a player from down south that, whilst we all might shrug our faces up at who's Morgan Whittaker, or we've never heard of him, or why are we signing a Swansea City player, there's probably a right good kind of gem down there. Hopefully it's Morgan Whittaker. Hopefully we can get it over the line, who Michael Beale can shape into the next Aribo that you go and sell for a big profit.
Yeah, and on that, I would have to say as well that you've got the likes of Michael Beale being criticised for even looking at these guys, when a year and a bit back, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst was being lauded because he's coming into Scottish football again, and he'll know everybody in Eredivisie, all the talent, all the nuggets that are hidden away here and everywhere. He'll know where all the diamonds are. Rangers are going to be a great team based on his, the information and knowledge that he has of talent spotting in the Netherlands. And he didn't even sign a Dutchman. So, at least think your criticisms through before you start, voicing your concerns, because some of the time you'll just be sounding off without absolutely having any, knowledge to back up your claims or back up your argument.
Stuart, I just wonder, the likes of the Gio one for me is an interesting one. So I kind of alluded to it earlier on. I think Gio was a bit of a backseat passenger when it came to some of the business dealings at Rangers. And I think that kind of symbolises where we've not went and signed players from the market that he knows. I think he put the trust in guys like Ross Wilson to go and identify and sign the players. And I think Gio's a good coach. I think he expected to be given the players and he would coach them based on who he's been given. Whereas Michael Beale, for me, is saying, no, do you know what? I know these guys. I've seen him in the flesh, or Cantwell's a player that I've respected for a number of years coming through the ranks. I think there's a right good player there that we should be going and signing. And he's probably much more vocal in those conversations with Ross Wilson about who he wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think, there are plenty of examples of people who have signed for various football clubs on the basis like, right, I'm going to, I'll give you a classic example of, in a Rangers context, Lindsay Hamilton. Lindsay Hamilton is back up to Chris Woods. Lindsay Hamilton is going to play in a League Cup tie, gets tickets for all his family on the sort of Wednesday afternoon. This is him. He's got to make his big debut, having been signed by Rangers. And Bonnie Ginsberg walks in through the doors, unannounced, and suddenly he ends up in the team. It's like there are a lot of guys that have signed for Rangers thinking that, oh, this is my big chance. And really, they're only back up to the main event when they come in. And I think that is exactly the situation that, in terms of Van Bronckhorst, I think that was a scenario at Ibrox when he was there. Yeah, you'll get to do certain things that really you won't. You're there to fill one job, and you stick to that job and try and get that job right. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, there's other deals being done that you might not even know about.
Oh, Stuart, I can't believe you brought up Lindsay Hamilton there, because that is the first thing that I think of as soon as I hear that name is when he made a glaring error in the 2007 Masters at the Braehead Arena that cost Rangers the tournament. So
that tells you everything about Big Lindsay then.
I know. No, but I mean, hopefully we can get a few names over the door. I think one thing that Michael Beale's done, and I know people maybe criticise him for being a wee bit too open in press conferences, but I like it. I think it's refreshing, and you just want a guy to be honest, don't you? But one thing that he has said, and I think this is really, really clever, when he turned around and said, I've done my job, I've spoke to the players, that basically means that if the deals don't get over the line, it's either Ross Wilson's fault or, somebody for the board's fault for maybe not putting the finances up. So I think with the criticism that has been levelled at, Ross Wilson and the board recently with the transfers, I think Michael Beale's kind of put them under pressure there to say, well, we now know as fans whether, they are going ahead and actually getting deals done, because that will be the reason that, that something doesn't get done.
One place I will go with the transfers, unless it's absolutely potty money that somebody offers you. So if somebody comes in and offers you, say, I'll just pluck a figure out of my ear. If somebody comes in and offers you 10 million quid for Connor Goldson, right? You might want to take it. In fact, you might take it. You might not have any replacement lined up. But if you were Michael Beale just now and you sold a player believing that you were going to get money to spend, that same money to spend in the summer, would you believe the board at Ibrox if they said, yeah, you sell them and we'll come back and revisit this in the summer and that money will still be there?
Mm.
That's something. That's a hell of a gamble.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. But just one of those things with transfers, we kind of get used to gambling at Rangers, don't we? But just lastly, then, before we finish up, I want to talk about Charlie McCann. Dougie kind of touched on it earlier. Rumoured that he is going to Forest Green Rovers. I think I just want to have a wee wider discussion about the sort of the B team sort of progressing into the first team, because we have seen the likes of, McCann, Lowry, Devine, Patterson obviously previously come through. But one thing that I've noticed since Michael Beale's came in is that the opportunities have been limited. Devine's obviously played at left back, Dougie, but that was out of necessity because of injuries and whatnot. Leon King, he hasn't played at all. When I actually heard rumours that Michael Beale maybe thinks that King's maybe going a wee bit faster than what he should be, so there was maybe talks about maybe going out on loan or something like that to get more experience. I mean, it is something that I noticed in, previously with Gerrard and Beale at Rangers, where there wasn't really anybody coming through. I know Patterson was sold for big money, but let's be honest, he didn't make that many appearances, did he? So Gio seemed to have more trust in the likes of Charlie McCann, Lowry, etc., to bring them in. I remember the Dundee United game, actually. It was after we'd been hammered by Celtic and Ajax, and Gio started Charlie McCann and Leon King. And it's like, it was a bit of a gamble, because that was obviously, there's a lot of pressure on him. It's a must-win game, and he's playing the two guys. I mean, what's your overall thoughts on Charlie McCann, firstly, possibly leaving, and the sort of the pathway opportunities there moving forward for these young guys?
I think it's a very fine line, because whilst Gio is putting faith in some of these younger players, some of it being enforced upon him through injuries, we were losing games. And I always go on about a couple of interviews I seen back to back when Rangers were back in the third division, and one was Frank de Boer at Ajax, and the other one was Alan McCoy at Rangers. And the question was put to them, very similar questions, completely unrelated. Frank de Boer's was along the lines of, you've sold a lot of your experienced players and you're bringing through youth players. Where do you think you're going to finish this season? And Frank de Boer's response was, it's not about this season, it's about 3 seasons down the line. In 3 seasons' time, we're going to have a brilliant team that's going to have success domestically and success in Europe. Counter that conversation with one of Alan McCoy's, then Alan McCoy's went and signed guys like Ian Black and whoever else we went and signed who were down in the third division, because he didn't want to put the trust in guys like Lewis McLeod, Barry Mackay, and so forth. And Alan McCoy's response back was, at Rangers, you just need to win your next game, otherwise you're under pressure. And I think that's where there needs to be a balance. These guys need to be good enough and ready enough to be able to step in and play the football. And that's why it's so difficult to break into a Rangers team. Whilst I think it was great that Gio gave these guys game time, we would not have been getting scalped 7-1 against Liverpool if Leon King was not centre-back. As harsh as that might sound, he wasn't at fault. But that kind of inexperience in that kind of key position is a fundamental reason why we get scalped on that day. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of on the fence because I am someone that's really passionate about the academy, someone that's really passionate, and all fans are. You want to see that kind of pathway from youth right into the first team. I think Charlie McCann's unique to some of the other players because we signed Charlie McCann from Man United. Going back to Stuart's comments about guys that haven't quite made it at a top club, you go and you sign them and you see if they're good enough for you. That's exactly what we did with Charlie McCann. And Charlie McCann needs to be treated slightly differently when you're having conversations about some of our young players like Lowry, because Charlie McCann did not count as homegrown. Charlie McCann would not have been homegrown in the European competitions, for example, and that is a huge factor. We will keep players in this squad purely because they were homegrown. And I'm thinking, I'm looking at comments around Scott Wright in the thread, for example. We all know that Scott Wright is not the best player in this squad, but he serves a very specific purpose, and that's that we need to have homegrown players in our squad for Europe. And that's the reason why you'll always have Charlie McCann treated differently to Alex Lowry. Now, on breaking through, Charlie McCann really impressed me. I'm not going to lie, in the games that I've seen Charlie McCann, I thought there was a real player there, and I think Forest Green Rovers is a really bold but refreshing decision from Charlie McCann, because he's looking at the current midfield ahead of him and he's thinking his game time is limited. And he's got an option right now of, do you go out and loan, get your match experience, then try and fight into the team? How many times have we seen young players do that and fail? Whilst we're talking about outs, we are linked with selling Lewis Mayo, who's on loan at Kilmarnock just now because he's not going to make the cut, Josh McPake at Queen's Park, and Kai Kennedy as well. All these guys who are not good enough to step forward because we have loaned them out. Charlie McCann's using this opportunity right now saying, okay, I'm not close to the first team. I'm not going to get a game in the first team. So I'm going to make the bold decision to go and seek first team football elsewhere. And I think it's brave and it's a good decision from Charlie McCann, because hopefully he can make a right good career for himself. But from Rangers' best interest, two things. One, Michael Beale spoke about sometimes with these young players, you've got to respect that they just want to be playing football. And I think it's Charlie McCann who was talking about when he mentioned that. But secondly, if we can negotiate the right deal to Forest Green Rovers and negotiate something like a percentage of next sale clause, if Charlie McCann goes down there and he does well, as a lot of fans expect him to be able to go down and do, we'll still benefit from it because we'll get a future cut of any transfer sales. So I think that's kind of my view on Charlie McCann. My view is very different on Alex Lowry, just for the record, because there's been a lot of chat around Alex Lowry in the thread. I think Alex Lowry is one of these young players that comes along once every 10, 15, 20 years. Alex Lowry is special. And I think whilst I've kind of made my comment about Charlie McCann and my comment about homegrown players, there's absolutely a place in the squad for some of these young players like Devine, King and Lowry. There is a place in the starting 11 at some point for Alex Lowry. But the big thing for Alex Lowry is he needs to develop into a first-team player. He's in that really unique gap right now where he's head and shoulders above everyone in the B team playing in the Lowland League, as you would expect a good young player at Rangers to be. But he's not quite good enough to come in and be a regular starter in Rangers, because he's competing with guys like Tillman, who is a player that Bayern Munich really rated. So he's up against good competition. He needs to take his chance. Alex Lowry's probably the epitome right now. He needs to put his head down, work hard, earn his place, and when he gets his place, it goes back to Barry Ferguson's situation and what you hear Steven Gerrard talk about. You need to be really ruthless and make sure that you just go and take that place. That's your spot. When you get that chance, you take that spot, you make it your most, and then there's no looking back. I'll sit here right now and put my cards on the line and say, Alex Lowry will get a chance at some point and he'll take it, and there'll be no looking back for Alex Lowry. And everyone will forget that at the age of, I don't know what age he is now, he's probably about 20. At the age of 20, he wasn't getting a game time at 19, because at 23 years old, he's sold for £20 million. That's where Alex Lowry could go. His career's in this kind of wee fine line just now where he needs to take that break, otherwise it can go two ways. But Alex Lowry has huge potential, and I really hope that he recognises that and he takes that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, Stuart, it's about balance, isn't it? Because we all like the idea of young players coming through and, Rangers fans and whatnot playing for their team. But I mean, you look at some of the situations that Leon King especially has come into this season. I mean, if you're wanting young players to come through, ideally you want to do it when the team's playing well, when they can come in and, they can kind of just bed themselves in and whatnot. But, I think if you're putting them in situations like that, where you're getting gubbed off Liverpool and what have you, it can be mentally scarring for them. So it's definitely all about the balance, isn't it?
I'll be very brief, given the fact that there's one or two there. I think I'm talking rubbish when it comes to Laudrup and Gascoigne. Obviously, they were there at the time when the deals were done. I'll leave this and make it very, very brief. Amad Diallo.
That was very brief, Stuart.
That is how transfers and the likes is never, ever an exact science.
Do you not think with Amad Diallo, Stuart? So I've got a few mates that are Man United fans that say things like, we didn't give him the chance to really blossom up here. I think with Diallo, towards the end of the season, he was starting to grow into the jersey, and exactly what I was talking about Alex Lowry. You need to start to kind of develop into a first-team player. We were starting to see that for Diallo, and personally, I would have given him an extension rather than the Matondo. Sunderland right now are benefiting from how we were nurturing him into a first-team player.
Absolutely.
And he would not be doing what he's doing at Sunderland had it not been for his loan spell at Rangers.
And that is, like good comedy. It's all about timing. I mean? It's absolutely. And Rangers, if you like, in the game of poker, blinked when it came to somebody like Diallo and thought, well, here's somebody's turned up and said, and they'll take him for whatever it is, and we've paid this, and let's do the books and let's see what happens. And he's gone elsewhere and has subsequently thrived. And, you can go back in history and see where players have come from and what their background is and what their DNA is and how they come through the ranks at various clubs, move them to sign them up, take them on board, give them a starring role. They just don't cut it with you, and then they go elsewhere and it's like, wow, look at that guy. And historically, it's happened to every club, and historically, Rangers fans out there will say, yeah, remember when we broke the British transfer record and signed him, and he only played 12 games and then he went to Everton and became a hero down there. Listen, it is not an exact science.
No, it's not an exact science indeed, Stuart. And I think that's a good wee point to wrap up on, guys. Thanks very much to the viewers at home for listening to us. I know we were a wee bit late, but we had a few technical issues with the 70-inch NFL telly, didn't we, Stuart? So
yeah, 27-10 for the Bengals just now.
Who?
No,
Bengals.
Oh, that's Sunday's for you, isn't it? No, but listen, thanks very much for joining us, guys. Stuart, thanks very much.
Enjoyed it.
Cheers, Dougie. Thank you for joining me.
Cheers, Craig. We could have talked all night about transfers, and it's great to see so much contribution in the thread. Hopefully everyone did enjoy listening to it. There's some food for thought around future transfers and youth development as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, as I say, thanks everyone at home for listening to us. As usual, your support is always appreciated. We will be tomorrow. The podcast will be available on all your usual podcast providers to download, your Spotify, iTunes, etc, etc, etc. So all that's left to do me is to remind you that we're going to be back on Friday with Scott and Gary to preview another game against St Johnstone, this time at Ibrox, where hopefully we can pick up the 3 points. So thanks very much for listening, guys, and we'll see you back on Friday.